Hello and welcome to the Bucks debate. Now we do have James joining us here, and we're going to talk about, is the virus real? Now don't forget you can comment, throw us your comments on the right, well I say on the right hand side, that's where you'll see it. James, I'd like to say hello James, by the way.
Hi guys, yep, how you doing Martin, you okay?
Yeah, not too bad buddy. Been a bit of a busy day, but got here in the end, as they say. Just let people know, put your comments in. We can actually bring you on to the show, but we do have a time limit today because I do have a prior engagement. So I'm just going to do a little thing which I think is quite funky, a little bit sci-fi in one way. Alexa, set timer for 1 hour 40 minutes.
1 hour and 40 minutes, starting now.
Did you hear that?
No, I did, mate.
Oh, excellent. Right, so 1 hour 40 minutes. That gives us time to slowly close it down because I've got a very funny feeling this is going to be one of those things where we literally will have to continue it on. Now, I, for instance, follow the vaccine sort of side at the antibody thing with Jacob Glanville, distributed by Arrives on anti-vax and what they're doing there. But we've had an interesting conversation in regards to, obviously, your take on viruses and the way they work with the body. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to you to let everybody understand exactly your point of view with this.
Okay, the point of view is that if we go back and start from the beginning and sort of give a little breakdown of where I come from and how I got to this point in having this discussion with you today and having many discussions with people from the medical field and having friends who are doctors as well, and how I got to this viewpoint that the virus theory or the germ theory in itself is a hoax. I remember when I was a kid, I was about 10 years old, and meningitis was a big thing back then, and it was all about getting the meningitis, is it A or B jab or whatever it was. And it was all in the news. Kids are getting meningitis, children are dying, your legs could be amputated, your arms could be amputated. And this caused genuine fear within me. I always remember getting out the car before a football match, I think at the age of 12 years old. And I had these red spots on my leg. And I literally thought I had meningitis. And the symptoms, I wasn't symptomatic in any way, but because of the media and the power of the media, I actually thought I had meningitis and I was going to die. And this carried on for years and years and years, where whatever the media pumped up or drummed up in the media, I instantly thought this was going to happen to me. And I was thinking about it today, actually, before we come on this show, is like, how did I get to this point? And this is probably the start of sort of my journey, because I went through life like everyone else, believing in the medical establishment. My mum would take me to the doctors if I was symptomatic of a certain legally defined disease. And so I ended up going along that process up until the age of about 21. I was going to the doctor. I was working at Heathrow Airport. I was spending hours and hours doing overtime. So naturally, I wasn't sleeping a lot. My nutrition was terrible. I wasn't fit in any way whatsoever. And I was literally on the decline. I didn't realize it, but I was. And one day I went to the doctors and I started getting acne. I've never had acne before in my life. And I went to the doctors, and I always remember the doctor, I'm not going to say her name, but the doctor she was very overweight and she was wearing glasses. And I always remember this. And she was in a little box room sitting in front of a computer. And I said to her, well, I've got this wrong with me, that wrong with me. She looked at me once and then typed into the computer screen and she researched the symptoms and she gave me steroids. She goes, take them. Okay. It'll help you. Yeah. And I was like, oh, brilliant. This is fantastic. This is all I need. So I ended up taking the medication and I started getting the effects. Now, it's really important to remember, anyone who's listening, that the number one key thing to what they tell you is it's not the side effects. It's the effects of the drug. They try and throw off the side effects as like, well, your body's been healed, but this is what potentially could affect you. No, it's telling you what it's actually doing. It's making you sick. And on the bottle, it's telling you. So I was getting excruciating headaches. I was getting dizziness. I was really unwell taking these drugs. So I went off it. And then I jumped into alternative medicine. And alternative medicine to me was like a little bit of a game changer, because I was reading up on all this sort of stuff about how plants and herbs and borax and anything else it potentially could heal you from certain things. But again, it confused me. It was all confusing because it is one thing after another. Nothing was ever plain and simple. And I think the truth, if you can't explain the truth to a child, or explain something to a child very simply, then it's definitely not the truth, because the truth doesn't work in complexity. Only a lie does, because the only way you can hide a lie is in complexity. So anyway, I then got involved in this anti-government movement called TPUC. And along that, I met a very amazing guy called John Harris, who was really into the law and how the law controls our whole existence. And I set up a talk for John Harris, and I ended up meeting some great people there. And one guy I did meet was a guy called Greg Simpson. And me and Greg become really good friends. We've been friends, well, really good friends now for 10, 11 years. And I ended up, we're going around his house for dinner. And again, I didn't know nothing about what I was getting myself into. And he just said to me, have you ever heard of natural hygiene? And I said to him, look, Greg, I don't have a clue what you're talking about. And he goes, well, natural hygiene is basically it's the biological laws of nature, which is the body heals the body. And the only way that you can sort of thrive in an environment is if you don't go against I call it the 5 biological laws of nature. And I was captivated by it. And he gave me a book by Herbert Shelton. He was sort of the new age founder of natural hygiene, where the information was lost and he gathered it back up again, started writing lots of books and information on the subject. And natural hygiene is basically, in a nutshell, is that the body heals the body. The body is a self-healing organism. That's all it is. And all you need to do is give it the time to heal. And that is it's so simple that a lot of people don't understand it's that simple. So I done my research. I got involved in fasting, which is the elimination of all foods. I started getting involved in that. And the more I gave up fizzy drinks, I gave up all pharmaceutical medicines. I gave up chocolate, biscuits. I went vegetarian. I went off dairy. I still do eat dairy very seldomly, but I'll give a reason why, or I don't have to, but I will do in future conversations. But I started giving up loads of different things. And the reason why I gave it up is because I knew that this stuff was actually toxic. And in natural hygiene, there's only 2 types of disease. Well, there's one. It's a high levels of toxemia and dehydration. They're the only 2 illnesses that exist in this world. And how we reduce that is due to our lifestyle habits. So my research then took me to a man who helped my friend Greg's wife, a guy called Dr. John Fielder. He is an osteopath in Australia, and he's a natural hygienist. He's been raw food for over 50 years. So he's been over 50 years raw food, and he's helped hundreds of people with acute and chronic illnesses. So I then made the decision to move to Australia to sort of learn and develop my understanding of natural hygiene through John Fielder. And John Fielder's wrote loads of books on the subject. He is, again, he's done loads of interviews online. He travels around the world. He's like, I would say he's the David Beckham of the health world.
So what was his name again?
His name's John Fielder, Dr. John Fielder.
Ah, right, yes, Dr. John Fielder. Okay.
So he's like the David Beckham of the health world. And again, I like to reiterate that natural hygiene isn't alternative medicine. It's the alternative to all medicine, because alternative medicine was here before, and all pharmaceutical companies did was just use alternative medicine and just made it a bit more toxic. And then they just monetized the whole drug companies and monetized everything around it to make money and sort of benefit of people's ill health. So anyway,
sorry, go on.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, so where you're going with this is the pharmaceutical companies have kind of said that we need all these drugs to obviously get better.
Yeah. So once I gained all this knowledge and I was reading from different authors and different hygienists and looking at both sides of the spectrum, I come to the realization is that what we are experiencing at the moment is a tyrannical, mafia-based system where the pharmaceutical industry are like new age religion. You cannot question pharmaceutical companies. You cannot question their methods. You cannot even question any part of their sort of way of doing things, because if you did, then it could cause a huge problem. A lot of people have come out and tried questioning the pharmaceutical industries, and they've ended up sort of disappearing or being sort of deregistered from practicing medicine. Like I said, which 400, 500 years ago, and even in third world countries now, they still practice witchcraft, and they believe that evil spirits come into the body, and they would come into the body, and then they would infect you with this deadly spirit. And then what they would do, they would even use things like leeches to try and draw the blood away from you, to try and get this evil spirit out of you. And again, it's this hocus pocus sort of mentality and playing on the ignorance of humanity, where the pharmaceutical industry have done exactly the same. And you're looking at something like a pharmaceutical industry, which their GDP for 2019 was $1.3 trillion.
That's a lot.
You're looking at a lot. And there's a legal maxim that exists that no one should be able to profit from human health. But if you're making $1.3 trillion per year, you are definitely making money from human health or animal health as well, because not only do the pharmaceutical industry feed us with the drugs or with the vaccines, they also feed the livestock with the vaccines and the drugs. So we've got a situation where we've got the pharmaceutical industry, which are the new church. We've got the doctors, who are the priests. We have someone like Bill Gates, who's Jesus Christ forthcoming.
Okay.
And we have a system in place where you can't question. And I questioned a bunch of doctors a couple of weeks ago on another radio station, and they categorically said to me that they would talk to me and they would be in dialect with me after the show, because I tried questioning the methods of the virus and the germ theory, blah, blah. And I've not heard from them since. I've not heard from one person since. They've literally just ran away. And like I said before, I don't make money from this. And my only job is to sort of make people aware, because if you've got a system in place, and I mean nature, when nature provides you with everything you need, why would you think nature would be responsible to try and kill you? If we didn't have certain elements, if we didn't have all the elements nature provides us, then we wouldn't be able to live. So to say that there's viruses or deadly germs which are sort of can be contracted from human contact or from the air is absolutely ludicrous. Now, if you look at hygiene works with 5 biological laws, which is
natural hygiene here, yeah.
Natural hygiene. Okay. And it works very simply. It works off exercise, raw food, fresh air. Where is it? Fasting, sleep, and water. Right. Now, there's 5.
I need to write them down because I'm going to forget them. So 2 was what?
So you got fresh air, so air, water, raw food, sleep, and exercise.
Ooh, yeah, and the 5th one. I've got exercise, fresh air, water, sleep, and what was the other one?
Raw food.
Raw food, okay. What do you mean by raw food?
Raw food as in food which hasn't been processed.
Or raw cow.
No, yeah, well, anything which hasn't been processed or hasn't been cooked.
Okay.
So nature works off these biological laws. Now, in order for you to sustain a high levels of vitality, you have to live by these rules. These are laws that exist in all plant and animal life, and all animal and plant life adhere to these rules. The only people that don't adhere to these rules are humans. Now, humans are the only species that don't adhere to these biological laws, because we seem to think as humans that we're more intelligent than anything else that's ever existed. So when you have doctors and scientists that look through microscopes, or they prescribe you with drugs, just prescribe you with drugs, they actually think they know better than nature. And this is where the problem lies, is that our intelligence actually fools us, because we can't see things simply. And when you can't see things simply, you become confused by it all. And that's where they want you. You become confused by scientific talk, by language. You get confused by what disease actually is. Now, like I said, like the virus, and again, the foundations of the pharmaceutical industry is all based on the germ theory. And the germ theory is based on whether humans can contract a disease or microorganisms through bodily contact or through the air. But with a virus, because they are literally looking at a microscope and they're seeing things which they feel shouldn't be there, doesn't mean it doesn't need to be there.
Okay.
Because in terms of, like, let's go through the history of a virus. And the last big epidemic was 100 years ago, which was the Spanish flu. And that apparently killed over 50 million people.
Yeah, but SARS, wasn't it? You had SARS, MERS, they're all viruses as well.
Yeah, so, but if we go back...
The pandemic is the 1918. But
yeah,
at mass scale. But
yeah, so
your SARS, you've got people in, Tokyo and LA that all wear masks because they don't want to obviously pass on the disease or catch it themselves, So, but you're saying this virus isn't real, and if we had a natural hygiene, we wouldn't sustain these viruses, basically.
No, well, not only that, because viruses don't actually exist in the form they tell you to. Because if we look back at every sort of major virus that has existed in the last 100 years, and we look at the Spanish flu as a case in point, the Spanish flu killed over 50 million people. What people don't realize is the majority of people that died were coming back from World War I, which they lived in toxic, poisonous environments due to bad sanitation and lack of basic hygiene. Okay. These people were actually living and fighting in their own mess, and they weren't having adequate water. So what we've got here is pollution, high levels of toxemia. Okay, people don't realize during World War I, most of the soldiers were being vaccinated up to 25 times. Up to 25 times these soldiers were being vaccinated, and the majority of people died in hospital. But no one questions that. No one questions the fact that people die in hospital. Why are they dying in hospital? And why are they having so many vaccinations when the biggest problem was their environment? It's all about the environment. And when the soldiers were coming home, the pharmaceutical industry were actually selling it to the American population, that soldiers were coming home with these deadly illnesses from Europe. You have to be vaccinated. And if we look at that, is just, again, we're looking at the environment, and it plays a major part. And if you look at the last sort of major virus before this one, it was the swine flu. Well, apparently that come from New Mexico from a pig. That come from New Mexico from a pig, which, again, the place where it actually happened, the pigs were actually living their own feces, and it was a polluted and toxic environment. Well, if you live in a toxic and polluted environment, you're going to get sick.
Right, okay. So you're saying that because the animals were actually not in obviously a natural state where they were just living in their own filth, and then we eat that animal, that's obviously causing us the issue as well.
No, it's not causing the issue. The idea that there is an issue came from the pretext that these animals contracted a virus.
I see.
But no one actually questions the conditions that these animals lived in. And it's the same rhetoric every time. We have avian flu. We had avian flu, which again came from a poultry farm in Asia, where again they lived in a toxic and polluted environments where they were living in their own feces, and it was a very dirty environment. Then we had that. And then we had the Zika virus, which was a couple of years ago, which they claimed came from mosquitoes. They came from mosquitoes, and it only affected newborns. The swine flu affected only people under the age of 65. Then you had, and all these so-called viruses, again, always goes back to this thing that I was saying at the start, is that witchcraft hasn't changed. Witchcraft hasn't changed, and people are not looking at the fundamental reasons why we're being sick in the first place. Yeah. And the reasons why we're sick, not as individuals, but as a nation, is because of our lifestyle choices. It's very, 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 very simple. If you eliminate the amount of toxicity in your environment, then obviously you're going to be healthier. If you live in a toxic environment, you're going to be sick. Now, what the virologists do, and what the big pharma does, and what the WHO and all governments do, they prey on the fact that there's a virus in order to bring fear. And when they bring fear, that means they can control you. Through control, you were adhered to do anything, just like we got with the masks and the gloves. You were adhered to do anything. And now the fundamental process of what they want to achieve, saying there's an existence of a virus, comes down to the fact that there's 3 methods that are in place in order to actually prove that a virus exists. And these things, and that is the most important thing that we have to focus on, because when they say there's a coronavirus, what they're actually telling you, there's a parasite of some sort, or a germ, which again goes into the body and infects into a whole cell, then makes you sick. Then when you get sick, you start to have symptoms of a disease due to the fact that there's some sort of alien microbe or some dangerous microbe which has gone into the body. But what they don't tell you, and what's very important, is that in order for anything to break down or renew or to regenerate, bacteria has to be present. Without the presence of bacteria or these little microbes, nothing would regenerate, and nothing would break down, and nothing would actually clean. And when they start looking for a microscope, all they are looking at is cell particles, disease cell particles. And what your body does, it actually creates this bacteria in order to break down the toxicity in the body. So you've got something where they're looking at it and they see a deformed cell. They see a deformed cell and they say, well, that's the presence of a virus. I'm like, okay, interesting. Well, that's the presence of a virus because this is what you're looking at. But we're actually not looking at the reasons why that's existing in the first place, because they're looking at it from their own perspective, because they want the answers in order to benefit them. But even through their own methods, they can't improve the existence. Now, this is a very interesting thing. And again, I'm not going to go too scientific, but I'll make it very clear to everyone, is that modern medicine has never proven the existence of a virus. Not once, and never have. We've had swine flu, we've had Ebola, we've had avian flu, we've had Zika virus, we've had coronavirus, we've had the Spanish flu, we've had all these different types of viruses, but they have never ever proven in their own medical journals the existence of them. Now, there's 3 methods to prove the existence of a virus. The number one.
Yeah, I'm write this down. Can I write this down? So go on.
Yeah, it's very important. So for people who are listening, or people who are going to listen in the future, is that in order for a virus to exist, you have to isolate it from the host cell. First and foremost, that you must isolate the virus from the host cell.
Right.
And then after that could be from fluids, serum, plasma. it could be from anything. So you could extract that, take a blood sample or your bodily fluids. You could go and look at an electron microscope, look down at it, and then isolate that virus from the cell. Then it has to be photographed. And then it has to be biochemically characterized. Now, this is in their own publishings, their own medical journals. Without these three things, there is no existence of a virus. No way, shape, or form. Now, in order to prove the existence of different viruses in its own sense, you would have to look at a virus, and if the virus does exist, it will take on its own shape and form. Now, when it takes on its own shape and form, then you could prove beyond doubt the existence of a virus. The doctor who messaged me, who I was in conversation with a couple of weeks ago, she sent me a picture from the CDC, Central for Disease Control, and she says, here's the proof of a virus. And all she showed me was deformed cell tissue. That's all she showed me. I said to her, and it wasn't isolated from the whole cell. It was only seen through electron microscope. It wasn't photographed, and it wasn't biochemically characterized either. So all they're looking at is deformed cells. That's all they're looking at. Because the body, in a sense, just like nature, just in soil, just in sewage, and just by looking at nature itself, the presence of bacteria, the presence of microbes are important for the breakdown of dead or diseased cell tissue. This is why they exist. Have you ever seen a dead body decompose? Have you ever seen food decompose? How do you think that decomposes? It decomposes through the microbes and the bacteria within that.
Yeah.
And that is the process of what the body goes through every single day. And when you've got 15 trillion cells keeping you alive, by God, with the lifestyles that we lead every day, God, we need some help. And this is...
Yeah, but that's what medicine's there for, isn't it? That's what. Because at the end of the day, if we take a look back in the centuries, for instance, we would have, for instance, caveman, probably what age limit towards 20, 30 years old, and then as we obviously become closer to the 20th century, our age has increased.
Yeah, but increased to what? To what level are we looking at? Because we're only defining age by post-industrial age. We're looking at post-industrial age, where people were living in young children were working in mines, and they were dying very young due to the pollution that they were getting from working in very bad and hostile environments. So I think before we start questioning whether we're living longer, my nan's 97 years old. She's 97. She lived outdoors most of her life. Right. She was a POW in World War II during Nazi Germany. Her longevity is down to a very simple existence. Never smoked, hardly drinks. Her food is as bland as they come. Never had a takeaway, and never driven a car. Never had no money, and she's lived a very simple life. How come her children are dying before her? 2 of her children have died at the age of 60.
Yeah, but I can also say I know people who've drunk, they've smoked, they've had a party lifestyle, and they're still alive today.
Yeah, no, and you know what?
100, for instance, I'm saying, not my mate down the street who's like went out last week and partied. I'm talking about old people. There is a balance in life where, my aunt, who was a nun, didn't drink, didn't smoke, literally went all around the world, and then died of cancer.
Yeah, and again,
how does that happen then?
It comes back to the biological laws of nature. If you neglect one part of that, you're going to have problems. And again, I like to reiterate with the virus theory is that because there's a presence of something doesn't mean it's there for the reason that you think. Just like the same reason why a fireman's not responsible for the fire because there's a presence of firemen. And this is what people need to understand. Because there's a presence of something doesn't mean it's there to sort of fit the agenda which is being pushed onto us. and again, if we look at the proof, in not one medical study, and I like to make this very clear, in their own medical journals and stuff, they have never ever proved the existence of a single virus, not one single virus, not the coronavirus, every single virus.
All right. Hang on. We need to add something to the stream here. Let's have a quick look at Google. So if we put in what does COVID 19 look like? How's that?
Okay,
go to images, right? Okay.
Look, what can you see there? What can you see? Photoshop pictures, all photoshopped.
Okay, all right. Let's have
everything is photoshopped. Every single, and again, this highlights the fact that I'm not talking rubbish. Where, you know, if you look at all these pictures, every single one of them is Photoshop. Look, they're not even real. They're just made from some arty guy in the editor's office somewhere.
Is that? Do you reckon that's Photoshop? Shall I make
this is a Photoshop picture. This is more than a Photoshop. This is not a real picture.
Okay.
This is a superimposed picture. This is not real.
Well, I'll tell you what. I bang on enough about Sinovac. Now, again, I believe that there is viruses out there. I believe that all that exists, and that.
Martin, in what form? In what form do you believe? You believe that they exist in order to harm us. I believe that microbes, and again, I don't like using words they put onto us. I believe that they're there for the breakdown and reconstruction of dead cell tissue, and bacteria are the world's scavengers. Their job is primarily to keep us alive and break down and get rid of pollutants and toxic waste, and that's their job. And that is the only job that bacteria does. If you look at nature in itself, nature will never ever want to harm you or kill you. Just like your body is not designed to kill you, your body's designed to keep you alive.
Yeah, your body is, but other things in nature are not designed to keep you alive. So
but nature is, in its simplistic form, it provides you with everything that you need to survive and thrive.
Yes and no. I mean, if you get bitten by a snake, especially if you live in Australia, well, there's quite a few of them. If that bites you, your body can't deal with that.
Well,
so
again,
you need an anti-venom, which is a drug.
Not necessarily. I know people have been bitten by some of the world's most toxic snakes, the most dangerous snakes, and they've survived without an anti-venom. Again,
but it's not. It's the minority, not the majority, isn't it?
But Martin, what kills when you get bitten by a snake? What's the one thing that you think is going to happen to you?
Well, you think you're going to die.
Exactly. And what does that do to your mindset
and shock and stuff like that?
It kills. And I just want to lead on again to this bacteria theory again, because it's very important that people understand this, is that through these three methods that they have, again, in their own scientific journals, are for the existence of a virus to exist, these three things need to be in place. In 2019, you can go on your Google, and 2015, there was a doctor called Dr. Lanka, and he offered anyone $100,000 if they could prove the existence of the measles virus.
Okay.
So they offered the proof of the measles virus. He offered someone $100,000. Some guy, I don't know.
Is it Dr. Lanka?
Dr. Lanka, Lanka.
All right. Okay. Which one is he?
I'm not sure. If you go to news articles, in it, or videos or whatever it's called.
Oh, shall I say? What did you say? It was a reward, didn't you, or a prize?
Yeah. So basically, he offered someone $100,000 to prove the existence of a virus. So someone came forward via Twitter and shown proof through six pet medical publications, and he said, here's the proof of the existence. Well, Dr. Lanka refused to pay by citing that these three generic rules that exist were not done through these publications. So the guy went to court. And Dr. Lanka lost. So if you've seen there, this is the article where he lost. So he was told to pay $100,000.
Okay.
Then this is the interesting part, because you won't see these news articles, these ones. In 2019, just last year, Dr. Lanka appealed, and he went to the German Supreme Court. Now, we're not talking about the Sri Lankan Supreme Court or the Kenyan Supreme Court or the Venezuelan Supreme Court. We are talking about the German Supreme Court, okay? And he appealed it, citing that these basic requirements were not proven in their own publications, and he won the appeal. The judge ordered that the appeal. He won the appeal. The judge ordered that he doesn't have to pay any fees because he was right in what he was saying. Now, there was a virologist in court, and his name was Andreas. I can't say his name. Andreas Podbilewski. His name was. I don't know if I got that right or not.
I have the same problem reading out people's names, so don't worry.
So he actually admitted, and this is very important, Martin, because again, this again debunks the whole viral theory. He says none of the authors who wrote those publications conducted any controlled experiments. Not one of them. All 6 of them didn't conduct any controlled experiments. And he says they did not adhere to the international defined rules of principles of good scientific practice. Right. So all these 6 publications did not adhere to their own rules or their own guidelines. And we've got a situation in the Supreme Court where a leading virologist at the University of Bern has come out, and he's basically said, well, these guys haven't actually done the experiments themselves. They haven't adhered to the international scientific bodies on the proof of the existence of a virus. So is there a measles virus? Because it's just proven in court and through the actual publications that there is no measles virus, because they actually can't prove the existence of it. All they are seeing in those microscopes is bacteria breaking down dead or diseased cell tissue. Now, there's 2 things that you work off. There's one thing called monomorphism. The germ theory or modern medicine work off something called monomorphism, which is one shape. So if you believe in one shape, then you believe in the germ theory that there'd be different shapes to different types of viruses, because cells, they say, are the same shape and form. But then if you look at the other side of it, there's another word for it called pleomorphism. Pleomorphism, which again means many shapes. It means many shapes. And cells take on different shapes and forms depending on how diseased that cell is. And if you see a deformed cell, all you're seeing is a diseased or dead cell, and all you're seeing is bacteria helping with the breakdown and healing of that cell. And that is it.
I've watched quite a bit, or read quite a bit as well, and looked into quite a few things. Now, from everything I've seen, for instance, let's take for one of the main things, obviously, the anti-vax antibody. So they've got an antibody that's technically in our body. They grow it, and then they introduce it into your body, and it will attack the cells, or obviously attack the cells that are causing you the issue, obviously the virus, which is coronavirus. Actually, they don't attack it. They kind of block the receptors from being able to infect other cells. But you're saying that those cells that are your cells that are getting broken down? I don't know. How would you explain? I mean, it's an interesting one because we're working on science fiction here, because microbes don't cause disease; they are merely present during disease. Right.
Now, when you talk about antibodies and stuff, say, for argument's sake, right now, the body does not read anything but poison, whether it's non-harmful or poison. There's nothing which is good for you. And I want people to remember this. There's no food in the world that is good for you. There's just foods that don't harm you. And that's very important.
I've never heard that before.
It's a very important thing to remember, is that it just doesn't harm you. And if you look at if you look at I forgot what I was about to say there. No,
I get like that. Don't worry, I get like that.
there's things that don't harm you. And what I'm saying is that when you ingest something, whether it be in a vaccine or a medication or too much water or too much of the right foods, the body will read it as poison and the body will excrete it. And what modern medicine does, they will tell you, your body creates antibodies. So when that virus comes into the body, it will read it from the last time, it will read it, and then it will nullify it. And then when this other virus comes, it will create new antibodies. To me, it's just preposterous and stupidity and science fiction at its finest, because we're delving into something which we're talking about and we don't really understand what we're talking about, because it's all scientific hoo-ha, it's all scientific sort of speak, a bit like legalese. There's a language for us and there's a language for the legal society, which they can go off and speak, and it means it's totally different to what our projection of the meaning actually means. So when they do this, when they tell you that they create antibodies, the body does not create antibodies. The body will only react to poisonous substances and will look to get rid of it at its quickest point. And that is it. The body will look to get rid of its quickest point. And when I was talking to the doctor a couple of weeks ago on the other radio station, she admitted that they actually can't, viruses are so small. This is what she said. She said, viruses are so small, we can't even see it. Right. And I said to her, well, how do you know it's a virus? She goes, because of the symptoms. And I said, hold on a minute. So you're telling me that you're diagnosing people with symptoms of COVID-19, but you actually don't know, you actually can't see the virus. And then she backtracked and said, oh, yes, we can, because she'd done some Googling. And this is a doctor, a GP, who's on 110 grand a year, went through medical school for over 10 years. And then she's sitting there quietly Googling in the corner. And I want to lead on to the antibody thing, because when they test you for something, this is very important to understand. They say the best way to know if you've got cancer is take a pregnancy test. The cheapest way.
Yes, go on then.
The cheapest way, because the body, all it's testing for is high levels of cellular activity, because the body's going through a healing crisis. And it doesn't matter what it is, the body will go through a healing crisis. Now, when they test you, all they are looking at is high levels of cellular activity in the body. They actually cannot. And they actually, one of the chief medical officers has come out and said, oh, guys, our antibody tests are just like a pregnancy test. So you're using the same methods as you do as a pregnancy test to determine whether you've got COVID-19. But only people who are symptomatic of who are symptomatic of COVID-19. But we all know symptoms could vary from any type of different disease. But in hygiene, it's only high levels of toxemia. And the symptom is effectively the cure. If you've got a sore throat, or you've got a buildup of mucus in your lungs, that's your body pushing out the poison out the lungs. Yeah. If you've got diarrhea, that's your body pushing it out from your backside. You know, your body's, people don't realize is that your body is just a huge array of tubes. And when those tubes get diseased, or they get compromised, you will get sick. And then the body will build up high levels of, your body then will go into healing mode. Now, what the doctors want to do, the doctors want to do one thing. They want to get rid of the symptoms. They don't actually want to deal with the cause. They just want to eradicate the symptoms. And once the symptoms have gone, their job's done. Yay, we solved it. We big medicine's worked again. You know, we chucked loads of drugs down our mouth. It's great. We've done it. And this is where we're at now. Now we're at a situation where scientists and leading people in the world of virology and big pharma can't improve the existence of any virus, let alone the COVID-19. You've just Googled COVID-19 pictures and it's come up as photoshopped art attack pictures. That's all.
I wouldn't say one of those photos was made up, as in so.
Well, if you look at one of those photographs, then if you look on the CDC website, again.
Shall I bring up the CDC website? Let's bring that up.
The CDC website, they'll show you a picture of a coronavirus, but again, a virus should take on its own shape and form, and unfortunately, it doesn't. CDC.
Let's bring up the CDC. See what the Center for Disease Control and Prevention.
Prevention.
Let me just throw one out to the people there who are watching.
Lovely picture again. Lovely picture.
Another Photoshop. If you're getting value from this,
isn't it?
If you're getting value from this, do comment. Somebody put a little comment in for me. I want to make sure the comments. I'm quite surprised a lot of people haven't actually put some comments in already and asked some other questions, because I've kind of let you get away with saying quite a lot actually without even interrupting, because I do think we'll have to come back to this. But yes, anyway, if you're getting value, put a comment in. Don't forget to subscribe to FBL, always like that. Have a look down in our description below, and you'll have some links there. Maybe we'll put some links in as well from James to some of the places that he's been talking about, especially natural hygiene. So thanks for watching, by the way. So let's get back to this, James. So we're looking at the CDC, Center for Disease Control and Prevention. It's American, isn't it, the CDC, I believe?
Yeah.
So where do we need to go? Now, I'll just explain.
I had the doctor send me the link on my phone. I don't know actually where to go on there. It'll probably be right at the bottom and right hidden in the corner somewhere.
Okay. Well, what are we looking for exactly? We've got coronavirus 2009. Should we have a look at that first? Should we have a little butchers at that?
Yeah, let's have a little look.
Yeah, I was going to say, because the screen that you're looking at is actually on my left screen to everybody. So I'm not just looking away. I'm actually doing something. Let's get the facts about coronavirus. See if there's any pictures there. We've got symptoms, self-check symptoms, people at risk. Should you get tested?
Yeah.
Oh, well, we're going to symptoms? Symptoms. Well, it's just going to say exactly what you got, isn't it? Now, I'll tell you what I do find interesting about all this vaccine stuff. Now, quickly come back just to the two of us. Again, I think we can gather that I kind of be like, I'm for instance, anti-vax. But I do have a big, massive issue about taking drugs if you don't need them. For instance, if you've got a headache, try and drink water. Believe it or not, water can, again, this goes back to one of your things, is dehydration. It can deal with quite a lot, and good night's sleep. I mean, I literally today I've had about 3-4 hours kip because I was dealing with something else earlier. That was somebody's website. Never mind. It's part of another business venture I'm on. And then obviously I had a lot going on today. But I know if I get a headache, that probably I need to go and lay down or drink some water, especially if it's been hot, which it has been today.
It's simple, isn't it? So simple.
It is. But also with, for instance, Centavax, the reason I love, and I do bang on about Centavax, probably to the person who's writing these subtitles, I apologize and I'll give you a big hug because we talk loads. And she probably hears this quite a lot, by the way, me saying about Centavax, is it's an antibody. Now, I believe the body does produce certain things and it helps us along the way to survive. So they have to grow these antibodies to inject them into you to attack the virus that you say is not a virus. But again, we'll come back to that. But that takes 20 minutes. After 20 minutes, it will start to eradicate it or stop it from reproducing. That's how it gets into your lungs, how it obviously starts to break it all down. Again, it goes back to about the tissue, like people prove to you by showing you, that the lungs have degraded. That's the virus working or mutating the cells to cause you, pneumonia. That's how obviously COVID-19 basically kills you eventually. Then breaking down everything in your body then just starts to shut down and then you die. But I don't understand, and this goes back to way earlier. We're talking about 40 minutes ago, straight at the start of when you were talking. There's all this about a vaccine that you take the shot. It takes you 8 weeks before you become, before you're covered with antibodies. They detect the virus that you don't agree that there is, but they attack the virus. Yeah, it takes 8 weeks. But if you get it before, for instance, 6 weeks, you'll get double the dose, which means that could be life or death. Now, the biggest thing for me is like, why is this big pharmaceutical company getting all this money from all the governments. I mean, it's Oxford University who are getting this money, but I'm sure they will link to a pharmaceutical somewhere along the lines. But this little business, Distributed Bio, Jacob Glamble, Sarah Ives, and all the other scientists, anti-vax, they've been on Netflix. They've been saying their stuff way before the pandemic actually happened. So it's not like they're not known. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation have given them money. They've given them money.
That scares me.
I know. But that's for the universal vaccine. Because one of the biggest things about the vaccine for the common flu is it's only like 3 or 4 strands it actually protects you against. And that's because the CDC, funny enough, and the WHO turn around and go, right, we predict from February. They look at all the data and they go, these are the strands we believe are going to, be an impact for everybody out there. So you then get that shot. So if something's not that strain, well, then you're going to get flu. And no matter what, you just have to fight it yourself. But with anti-vax, what they're doing with their COVID-19 cure, it works in 20 minutes and it's at 97% effective rate so far of all the tests that have happened. And they're independent tests, by the way. And it's like, well, why would you not give them a whole load of money for them to carry on, obviously finishing off their tests that some of the other pharmaceutical giants out there don't have? They just push it out and they do straight to human trials. So what the hell's going on there?
Well, I find it very hard to even question both sides of it, because I look at anti-vax or anyone like that, and again, I want to reiterate, there has been no proof in any scientific journal or medical journals or from any virologist or any leading scientific professor to prove the existence of a virus. Now, I'm not the one, again, basing, this is not my theory, it's their theory. And if you can't prove your own theory, then you've got a massive problem. And when I hear about it takes 8 weeks to work, and this one works in 20 minutes, and it creates these different strains of flu, and it mutates into this flu, and there's a disease from a bat, and it mutates into human form. And to me, it belongs in a film, because it doesn't make sense to me. None of it makes sense to me, because to me, it just confuses the mind and makes me fear something which is not there to be feared. I don't fear ill health. And I don't fear getting sick, because I understand the process of the body. Like I don't buy into the theory that we should be walking around wearing gloves and masks, protecting ourselves while McDonald's is still open. Well,
it's only just opened.
I don't buy into the fact that you can go and buy alcohol from the shop. You can destroy your body in one way, but you protect yourself in the other. And we have people like big pharmaceutical industries. Like a couple of days ago, Boris Johnson was at a massive vaccine summit. I think it's June.
That's right. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
They raised $8.8 billion for the production of this new vaccine. Where did they get the money from? Where did they get the money from for all that?
That is another conversation. I mean, again, this goes back to what I was just saying about the pharmaceuticals. My biggest thing is the pharmaceuticals, all politicians and all the people who have money can invest into these pharmaceuticals. And I do have a problem with the government. They give the money to CEPI and they give it to Accord, and then they invest. And if they had to give some money to Distributed Bio, or anti-vax, whichever way we want to look at it, it's kind of hard for me to explain, because Distributed Bio own a part of the company called anti-vax. Now, anti-vax, you might think is the name of the vaccine, but it's not, or the antibody therapeutic, I should call it. The anti-vax is the name of the company. They have another company called anti-vax. If they'd have got some money from CEPI or Accord, they'd be like, oh, okay, all good. But because they're proving things. They're proving, okay, not in your eyes, but in my eyes. And
no, but Martin, they're not proving nothing in my eyes. They're not proving anything in anyone's eyes. It's not my eyes which are deceiving me. They are not proving it in their own medical scientific literature. This is not them to go and write a book for me specifically to prove the existence. It's to prove the existence based on the theory that you can make $1.3 trillion a year GDP, a bigger GDP in Australia, based on a flawed science which you can't prove. Now, it's like me trying to sell you a product and telling you it works, and then you ask me the question, but does the TV work, James? Have you turned it on? Have you tried it? No. But how do you know it works? Well, because I tell you it works.
Well, yeah, but this goes back to the pharmaceuticals. Again, for me, and it kind of props up what you're saying about, what they say. I mean, at the end of you've got this, let's just say Centivax, it gets released, yeah, and how much it ever costs or whatever. You only need to take that if you're ill, okay? And this goes back to, for instance, if I've got a headache, I will drink water or lay down and have some sleep, or, close my eyes and just relax, meditate for a bit. Not that I really meditate.
You can't make money from that, though, can you?
What's that?
You can't make money from going to sleep and drinking a glass of water, can you?
No, you can't, exactly. But this is the point. So you think how much money it would take. So the government wants to literally 100% of the people were all going to get vaccinated, right? Or, as I said to MP Greg Smith, why are we not giving Centivax a few million so that they can work out their distribution because of where they are in their process? So if it does become available, we can just use it. Because frontline workers can take it, key workers can take it, and so could people who are infected.
Well, Martin, would you be comfortable? Would you be comfortable knowing that there has been no double-blinded or any primary proof of the existence of COVID-19? Would you be happy to take a vaccine, knowing full well there's no proof, legitimate proof of a virus that exists? And that's all I'm saying is that, we can talk about whether the money gets funded to one channel or the other. And I would probably strongly say the reason why it's not getting channeled to that corporation, so to speak.
Oh, no, we haven't lost you. Please don't say
they know it's a load of rubbish. And secondly, because it's a load of bollocks, they might as well give it to their friends in high positions of power. Yeah. And sort their friends out and make loads of money from it. Like, people don't realize that Bill Gates and the Bill Gates Foundation heavily fund the WHO. They do. What people don't realize is that the Indian government, the African government, especially Nigerian governments, are taking Bill Gates Foundation to court due to disabilities that have occurred due to mass vaccination programs in third world countries. And people are not unaware of this. There's billion-dollar lawsuits on Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and no one seems to bat an eyelid about it. Now, if I was causing that much damage, if I walked out of my door right now and kicked a little child in the leg, what do you reckon would happen to me? I'd be arrested and put in jail just by kicking a kid in the leg. But these people can go around the world on a flawed science. And again, it's a flawed science, and they can do whatever they please because they're protected by the law, because the law doesn't apply to them. Now, all these studies, I personally and strongly say that any good intentions done by anyone, if their intentions are good, then fine. But all they are doing by putting these toxins into the body, because we all know that they, as a preservative, they put mercury into vaccines as a preservative. Well, everyone knows mercury is the most deadly, the most deadly toxins in the world. And why are they putting this in vaccinations? I truly believe that vaccinations are the breakdown of the human body. These things are highly toxic, and they will destroy you, not just short term, but long term. And you will not see the effects of this over a number of years. And this is why they get away with it. You look at America. America, third leading cause of death in America is medical intervention. Oh, okay. Up to 500,000 people in America die from medical intervention.
Yeah, but how many people have survived due to medical intervention?
Well, that's a very good question. I would say pretty much a lot less than the people that are dying, because
you can't bring those facts to the table if you haven't got the other.
Well, we go to hospital. for the very reason to get better. Now, if the third leading cause of death in America is medical intervention, then surely they're not doing their job properly. If my job is to coach children to get them fit and they all become obese, am I doing my job properly? Yes or no? And you could say, James, you got 10 kids fat, but you helped one. Well, that doesn't make it right. It doesn't make killing 500,000 people right. Now, if we look at the cause of illness and the destruction, if we look at the actual causes of illness rather than the symptoms of ill health, and we look at our own, the first in 2016, WHO brought out deaths worldwide, the leading cause of death worldwide in low-income families across the world. Yeah, and they say COVID-19 attacks the respiratory system. The reason why the respiratory system is so important is because your body is constantly excreting and secreting poisons 24 hours a day. Yeah. Now, if your body's excreting and secreting poisons 24 hours a day through the lungs, you're going to get respiratory problems because it is disease and it's toxic. The first leading cause of death in low-income families is respiratory disease. The first leading cause. Heart disease is number one across the board, but in low-income families, respiratory disease is the leading cause of death. That was a 2016 study. Right. Now we look at COVID-19. They tell you people who are symptomatic of COVID-19 have respiratory problems. But in 2016, the highest rate of death around the world was respiratory disease in the first place. Now, if you look at their diagnosis of respiratory diseases, there has been a decline of diagnosis of respiratory diseases during COVID-19 because they've been diagnosing a symptom with a disease when it's not the disease itself. A disease is all in one and the same. But because the poison is actually coming out through the lungs, they're actually attaching it to a certain disease. And at the moment, the in thing is COVID-19. What a lot of people don't realize is that a lot of cause of ill health is due to dehydration and the lack of water and clean water. So when you have a lack of clean water, so that if you look at your body's like a sponge. Now, if you put a sponge in the bath and you take it out the bath and you keep pressing the sponge, what's going to happen to the sponge after a while?
That's just going to dry up, mate. Or if it's my kids, it's just left on the floor. But
exactly. So when it gets dry and it's not getting the right amount of natural things that it needs, and it needs water, then you're going to get problems. And these problems occur when you don't stick to the biological laws of nature. And again, it's very important as well to understand, like, if we sort of go on from the virus theory and then look at what actually causes ill health, we got to look at heart disease. Where does that come from? Everyone knows that comes from lifestyle choices. Cancer, where does that come from? Lifestyle choices.
Well, we've touched on this before in regards to, for instance, cancer. Me going back, obviously, to my aunt who died of it. Yeah, you know, drinking, not smoking, living a very full life, in the church and going around places. But there's a lot that goes on in this world, i.e., planes in the sky.
100%.
Just, I find it very, very interesting that since planes have stopped flying and cars have stopped driving, basically due to obviously the lockdown, how we've had really nice weather, even though somebody said actually we had a bit of rain.
And it's actually been nice. It's actually been clear skies. We've not had,
The clear skies is a good one as well, actually. I've noticed how clear they are, but maybe that's because, I don't know, it's one of those things. Maybe it's just luck, as some people say. It's just the way it is. But I do think with the planes and the cars and obviously all the fumes that are out there, if you've got all these planes flying over, it's obviously got to do something to the cloud and to the jet stream.
100%. And 100%. And like I said, it's our environment that dictates our ill health. It's pollution. And there's something, it's a Greek word, it's called miasmas. They call it miasmas. And miasmas means pollution. And before the germ theory was accepted as the Bible, and you can't question it, you can't actually debate it or actually attack it in case you get in case they attack you back with their money and their power. Everyone knew. Well, the whole consensus was the body. Any pandemic of any sort was due to pollution, and a case in point was in Philadelphia during the yellow fever. People were leaving again. All this is the same. It fluctuates and recycles itself every so often because it creates fear and panic. And when people are not educated about their lifestyle choices and how their lifestyle choices are causing them ill health, they will believe what they want to believe in order to make themselves feel happy that they're having their Big Mac. They're going to have their Big Mac and not get sick from their Big Mac, but make sure and not be scared of the virus. The yellow fever was caused by dirty water because animal remains were in the water. Dead, rotting carcasses were in the water. And they realized it was from the water which caused the yellow fever pandemic in Philadelphia. So again, look at the terrain, look at the environment, not just without, but within. Your body, if you're not living by those biological laws that I said, your body is diseased, it's sick. And your body's primary job is to keep you alive. And bacteria's only job is to break down the toxins within your body. And you can call it a virus, call it a microbe, call it a germ, call it whatever you want. But the process of life is exactly the same within our bodies, within soil, within sewage, within nature itself, within anything. Just look at nature and it will provide you with the answers. And again, Martin, we want to touch on about COVID-19 and the destruction of our civil liberties and our freedoms. We have. Let me just give you some statistics here.
Go on.
I'll give you some statistics where this is the lockdown of the. We've all been under house arrest. The whole world's been put in lockdown, and the whole world has never ever experienced this during any time whatsoever. Now, if the government cares so much about you, and if the pharmaceutical industry or the doctors and the surgeons and all these people care about you, let's look at disease as a whole. Cancer there's 10 million people a year globally die of cancer. Cardiovascular disease is the buildup of mucus and poison within the arteries of the body, which creates blockages, again, which creates heart attacks and so on and so forth. And again, through dehydration, the body creates, what's the word? Forgot the word. What they call it where you say you got high levels of, they do a test on you. You got high levels of something.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Cholesterol. High levels of cholesterol. So
I had no idea then.
Yeah, build up a cholesterol. Cholesterol's down to dehydration. So over 30% of all deaths in 2016 were due to cardiovascular disease. That's 18 million people. 1.9 billion people on this planet, this is by the WHO's own statistics, are obese. Are overweight. Out of those people who are overweight, 650 million of those are obese. Diabetes. 1.6 million people die from diabetes. And again, I want to chuck this one out. If the government cared about your life and was so interested in keeping you alive and keeping you safe, do you know how many people a year die of suicide? 800,000 people die of suicide every single year. That's
how are they going to stop people from committing suicide?
Well, what is creating suicide right now? What's creating the social breakdown? What's stopping people from working? What's stopping the people the sort of potential to earn money? What's stopping you, my brother or me, stopping us from running our business? When you have when you stop things from working, you make people start to get stuck in a rut. And when people are stuck in a rut, they get depressed. And when they don't see no way out, they do terrible things because people, again, especially men are proud and men have the right to earn a living. But we're being stopped from earning a living.
Women have the right to.
Women have got right. But again, it affects men more than women. Suicide affects men more than women. Now, if we look at anything, if we learn from this whole COVID-19 experience, is that the government do not care about your well-being. if they did, they would ban alcohol tomorrow. They would shut down every fast food restaurant. And if they really cared about the NHS, they would actually, in order to, again, the government banned them from to actually increase their wages. But if they cared so much about the NHS, why are they not banning all these things that are in place? The drugs, the alcohol, the fast food. If you alleviate and ban that, the drain on the NHS wouldn't exist because there'd be no one getting sick. If you take away, I would say 10 or 20% of the things that we do every single day, you've got millions and millions of people per year surviving and living long lives due to the fact that they're not putting a strain on their body, which then again is putting a strain on an institution which has been bankrupt since the day I was born. Like we're clapping for the NHS every Thursday for 10, 11 weeks and saying what a great job they're doing. But ever since I can remember, during the Labour era and the Conservative eras, it's all been about saving NHS. It's always been about saving NHS. This NHS has been under strain since day dot. And what does the NHS do? Provides income for the pharmaceutical companies. Like I said to the doctor, I said, you're a salesperson you're just a saleswoman for the pharmaceutical companies. Someone goes to you and you give them drugs and then the pharmaceutical company make money. You're just a drug pusher, just like a pharmacist. You go to a pharmacy and someone said to me once, well, do you agree with illegal drugs? I said, well, I don't have no problem with illegal drugs if it's selling legal drugs. The only difference is it's got the word legal next to it.
There is an interesting thing. I went out years ago to a secret birthday bash in America. So for my cousin, but his best mate, he works in the medical industry as a nurse, and he said, "Oh, I'll tell you what we'll do. Well, I'll go to work, but if you come down, we can give you just a check over, make sure everything's running okay. We'll give you this shot, that shot, that shot." And I was like, "Whoa, hang on a sec, hang on. Whoa, what do you mean? What do you mean?" And he's like, "Well, we got this, this, and this." And I was like, "Well, why do I need any of those? Because I'm not ill. I'm fine. I'm, playing a guitar, have a little muck around, have a beer." And he's like, "Well, why not?" And I'm like, "Well, is that something where you get, a commission from?" He goes, "Well, we have to move so many units as part of what the hospital has to do." And
exactly.
That's in America, though. It doesn't really happen.
But it does exist. It does exist because every doctor, and they would admit this as well, some won't admit it, but every doctor does get paid kickbacks for every vaccination they give.
I'm not aware of that. But
well, doctors are paid to give kickbacks, and then what they do is when the pharmaceutical company actually create these drugs and create these drugs, they actually go to these big they go to these big summits and stuff, and they sell the drugs, and then they say, right, if you prescribe this drug, this new drug, we will give you more money or give you more commission based on giving out this drug. So the new drug makes them more money. It makes the doctors more money. It makes the NHS, well, it doesn't make NHS more money because we're the ones that end up paying for the ill health of this nation. And again, look at the facts. Is that if you weren't sick, they don't make money.
To be fair, even if you're not sick, they make money. This is the horrible thing about vaccinations. If you have a vaccination, which you've got to have every year, by the way.
So they say, yeah.
Yeah, so they say. So you've got to have this every year. It's like, well, why? If I'm not ill, why do I need to take it? It's like, it's just to stop you from getting ill.
Yeah, stop you from getting ill.
Yeah. So and this goes back to COVID-19 about what they're pushing out there, just straight. I don't know the ins and the outs of the trials that they did, but they, judging by what Centre-vax are doing, I can only base it on that sort of road that I've gone down. It's like, well, they're already, they're still in trials, yet we've already pumped 6,000 people worth of this vaccine without any, it's like, well, are they still alive for one thing? Or, a vaccine, to be honest, you need 25, 50 years before you can work out what, possible side effects it can have for instance.
Well, it's just that I believe all medical testing is only done for one simple reason. Medical testing is done so they can, when they do animal testing on a certain drug or vaccine, the only thing that they're trying to do is to give you the levels of poison which doesn't kill you. That is it. So when they suss out the levels of poison which doesn't kill you, that's when they'll give it to you. And when they realize that this level of poison doesn't kill you, then they'll just chuck it out to the human population. But I do personally believe that people do need the vaccination, because the people's concept of health is so blurred and it's so obscure. It's got to a point now where people don't know how to look after themselves.
Yeah, but the point is, we don't need a vaccination like that. We don't need that. What we need is something like Centevax. We need medicine, like you're saying.
No, we don't need. I don't think we don't need medicine at all. What we do need is
we got to have medicine.
No, not at
all. So are you saying if you have a headache, a really bad headache, you wouldn't take a?
No, I've not taken medication since the age of 21. I'm 33 now, and I've got friends. Oh, I can just say personally that there's not one drug that exists which again benefits human health. All it does is actually stops the symptoms. It doesn't actually deals with the disease. You name me one drug that exists which actually eradicates a certain illness or disease. Because what happens is, if you stop taking that drug, the symptoms will come back again. And this is the trick. It always comes back. You got a headache.
If I've got a headache, I take an aspirin. Yeah.
Yep.
If I hydrate myself and make sure I've had some sleep or whatever, or I've literally got to do a live interview, I keep my head clear. I'll take an aspirin because I've got to a certain point and so that's why I take that medication. I don't want to take anything unless I really have to. So take, for instance, if I got COVID-19, that I know you say doesn't exist, but let's just say I was on. Let's throw this question at you. Are you saying if you was in hospital or a close family member was, and they said, look, they've got COVID-19, there's no such thing, but look, there's Centevax, it's going to work in 20 minutes, or we can just roll the dice and see if they survive, what would you do?
Well, because I put my trust into the power of nature, and I put my trust into everything that I've learned throughout the 10 years I've been studying this stuff. First and foremost, I wouldn't even go into a hospital unless I genuinely needed to. And I wouldn't recommend anyone to walk into a hospital, because once you do, then you're in big trouble, because you become... Don't forget that. Why do you think they call hospitals wards?
Don't know.
And then you've got wardens. What do you have in a prison? You have wardens.
Yep, like that.
Yeah. And an MP, a local MP is a ward of the state. He's your prison officer. You don't realize that when you go into hospital, it's a military hospital. The chief medical officer for the government wears a military outfit. And all they're doing is doing government testing on you.
The chief medical in America, they do.
Well, in England, you'll find in England they do as well.
All right. Well, then let's bring up Google.
Let's go.
Chief medical.
I'm talking rubbish.
Have a look. Images? UK. We better put UK, haven't we? Because we'll probably get America.
Well, if it's in America, it would be in England as well, because everything comes from this country anyway.
We need pictures. Well, not necessarily.
Well, everything comes from...
Yeah, here we go. It's Whitty, isn't it? Professor Whitty, Chief Medical Officer. He doesn't wear a suit. So he wears a suit. He doesn't wear a uniform.
Well, I'll tell you what. I'll find. It might have another name. I could be wrong. It could be wrong. And again, I'm not afraid to say I'm wrong. But again, you're walking into a military hospital and they are doing experiments on you. And to answer your question on COVID-19, if my mum, for argument's sake, and I'll be very honest about this as well, and it's very important that people understand this. If my mum generally thought she had COVID-19 and she was going to die, I would drive my mum to hospital. Because if my mum didn't understand the process of the body like I do, then the fear would kill her. Because the mind is the amazing thing, and it's same with you, Martin. Sometimes your belief is more powerful than the body itself.
Agreed.
And
that's
sometimes
why never give up. Just keep going. You'll be quite surprised how much that actually helps you in life.
Yeah, and so and again, to answer your question, if my mum was symptomatic of COVID-19 or what they said was COVID-19, I'd be sending my mum straight to hospital because she generally believes that it exists, and that's the most important.
So let's say you get ill,
and I've been ill. I've been myself.
Touch wood that none of this happens and all that lot, because I would never wish this on anyone. But let's just say you got ill and you were in hospital. So there's a bit where you've got to make a choice.
Well, who would get me to hospital in the first place?
I would. I'm taking him. I'm Spartacus. I'll take him.
I wouldn't be there. But yeah, I understand what you're saying.
You wouldn't get in an ambulance and go to hospital. So if your wife phoned up the ambulance, 999, and said, right, my husband's really ill. Can you get round here? These are the symptoms. They turn up, said you got COVID. You would not get in that ambulance.
No, because I don't fear ill. Like I said before, I don't fear ill health, and the body, what it goes through is a natural process of healing. The body, and then again, it's a very important thing. Again, a very important thing in natural hygiene, and it says that every process the body takes is the right process. Every action the body takes is right action.
Yeah, but what if that right action is for you to die?
Well, if again,
medication there is this medical advance, for instance,
medical advance, but we've got a US government which killed 500,000 people due to medical advancement.
Let's forget about that for a second. We're just talking about you in this scenario. You're in hospital, so we've now somehow blindfolded you, gagged you, got you into hospital, into a bed. I'll tell you what, because, for instance, you have degraded due to the virus. That's not your eyes, right? You're laying there and they give you the choice, right? And let's just say you are really, really ill. And they say, right, you've got two choices here. Yeah, or actually three. One's do nothing, which is what you're saying that you would naturally do because you believe that your body will fight. And you
could fight, it will heal, not fight.
Yes, sorry, apologies there, James. Sorry. So, or we could incubate you, or we could give you this drug that will work in 20 minutes. You're saying you would obviously tell them, don't incubate me and do not give me that drug. I will. No,
and I will tell you a true story is that my friend Greg was in the same situation. His wife had blood clots in her leg, and to cut a long story short, they basically said that she could be in a wheelchair or they might have to amputate one of her legs. Now, to put someone in that position is a million times worse than COVID-19, whatever you want to call it. Greg made the informed choice to go out there and actually find help, because he was at his last legs, and people only adopt natural hygiene. Natural hygiene is so simple, but it takes a lot of willpower in order to sort of change your life and make your life simple, which is give up all the sort of life luxuries that life gives you.
I was going to say luxuries.
Yeah, but I live a very simplistic life. So Greg found John Fielder, the guy that I went to learn off, meant to be mentored off for 3 years. And John Fielder helped him via Skype, and he explained to him the process of the body and the process of healing and why this was happening in that isolated area of the body. He literally picked her up out of the hospital bed and he fasted her for 10 days. No food, just water for 10 days. That woman is now walking. She's living a normal life like everyone else. And if it was for modern medicine, that poor woman would be in a wheelchair or worse, be living without a leg or be on permanent medication. So this is what modern medicine do. Modern medicine want you to believe that they are the saviors, just like religion and just like God and Jesus and the whole the God theory and fear hell and heaven and good or bad. And the doctors do exactly the same. But if the doctors and the hospitals and the pharmaceutical industry knew what they were doing, how come when you go in hospital, you've got to sign a legal waiver every single time?
Yeah, that's to protect them because of
protect them against what? But if what they said was
malpractice,
and the vaccine industry is exactly the same. The vaccine industry is immune from law. They are immune from any law in this country.
You said something very interesting there, which is she fasted for 10 days, correct?
Yes.
Right. So in other words, for 10 days, her body did not ingest anything except obviously water. Was it bottled water or just tap water?
It doesn't. Like I said, it's splitting hairs when you actually say what type of water, because water, it doesn't really matter what type of water. It's not. It wasn't the water which was actually helping her. It was actually her actually.
Well, the water was helping because it was diluting all the toxins in her body and allowed them to leave the body.
Yeah, but it wasn't helping the process of healing. The process of healing was actually the art of doing nothing. She allowed
the 14-year-old son who has the art of doing nothing.
Yeah, and it's the art of doing nothing, where she was in hygiene they say intelligently doing nothing, and she allowed her. She took her body away from the environment. She stopped her body from consuming any toxins or poisons. And I fasted as well, and I know what people go through. And I've got a friend who fasted for 35 days, without food for 35 days. When you eliminate the obstructions and you eliminate the problems which cause ill health, then you'll get a point of healing. But healing is not happening overnight. Healing does not happen. It can happen over a 20, 30-year period. Now, I'm going to tell you a story about my dad. My dad fell off a ladder head first onto the concrete. This is when he died about 6, 7 years ago. My dad went to hospital, and apparently, I wasn't there, but apparently he was awake and conscious and wanted to go home. They put my dad in an induced coma. My dad never woke up. Now, their answer to that was, when they turned off the machine, was, oh, well, he would have died anyway. Well, how do you know that? So you put my dad in the induced coma. He actually started to get pneumonia. I can't even say that word. Pneumonia. I can't even say that word. On the chest. Because he was sitting still, and all the drugs they were pumping him, all the antibiotics and the drugs they were pumping him, and he was getting fluid and mucus on the chest, so they had to keep rolling him to try and get rid of the mucus. And then a couple of days later, he died in hospital. Now, I could look at that and say, oh, they did a great job. They kept him alive for another week. But I can actually look at it and say, well, you weren't the cause of my dad's death, but you did actually add to my dad's death. And again, we look at the deaths. We look at the deaths in hospital. We look at the deaths of COVID-19. 500,000 people around the world have died from COVID-19. The vast majority of them are elderly with underlying health conditions. These people have got cancers, heart disease, very serious diseases, and to say that they died of.
Yeah, but they said that there's a massive increase in the deaths this year, and that's how they were able to say about, for instance, this amount of deaths is normal for this type of year, which is, if you can class it as normal. Any death's not normal. Yeah. And then you've got this increase here, which is COVID.
No, but the increase is very minimal. We're looking at an increase of like 2%. And if you look in some areas like in London, the actual death rate is decreased. So COVID-19 has been great for.
The death rate will decrease if people stay in.
Exactly. So it's actually doing.
They're not getting out there. They're not putting themselves in harm's way. But the point here is about the virus. Is it's out there and it was infecting people. It's being spread.
But if you look at the numbers, again, they're saying 9 out of 10 people have had underlying serious health conditions. Over 50% of those people were in palliative care, which means they're at end of life anyway. And then you've got to look at the fact that majority of these people are dying in care homes and hospitals. No one's actually questioning the drugs they've been given, the medication they've been given. Are these ventilators actually good for you? So we're actually not looking at it as a whole and actually questioning what we're actually giving these people in terms of medication or the care they're receiving. We're just going, oh, they died of the virus. Now, if you put the statistics up from a global statistic, the amount of people that died based on the world population, you've got a statistic of 0.00007. This is to shut the world down and to close the world up for a virus which kills 0.0000007% of the world population.
Right.
And the majority of those people are over the age of 65 who have got underlying serious health conditions. And if you look at the amount of people in the middle ages or young people who have died of it, which is very minimal, you are shutting down the world. But tuberculosis kills 1.2 million people a year, but you don't bat an eyelid. Tuberculosis is a viral disease of the lungs. Again, respiratory disease. So again, and we got America, which they say America's the leading cause that is now in the lead of COVID-19 deaths and
judging by this, yeah, it looks like it.
and people who are getting COVID-19, people are dying from it. But we got to look at America as the most diseased country on the planet. These are the people that think tomato ketchup is a fruit.
Oh, I don't think so.
No, but no offense to them, but this is the levels of education that we've got at the moment, where people actually think that due to our actions and ill actions of our everyday lifestyles, we are so more afraid of a little microscopic microbe that we can't even see, we can't even feel, we can't even touch. But I can go and order a Domino's pizza for £20, and that will do a lot of harm to me due to the amount of chemicals, the amount of wheat, the amount of processed genetically modified food stuck in there. So why are we worrying about something? Just say, for argument's sake, the virus was real. Why aren't we worrying about the other causes of ill health, which we can see, feel, touch, and hear, which is due to our own lifestyle choices?
Yeah, well, going back to the fear factor. I mean, you've got to understand, not you, but I'm saying to the people out there, you've got to understand that 20%, or I think it might be 10%, are only the people who are going to be affected by COVID-19. But this is what I was saying about earlier, and we kind of moved away. This is why we're going to come back to this.
Yeah,
you've got 100%, so 80% of the people of the world will not be fazed by this disease or this virus. But we're willing to vaccinate the whole entire world for the 20% who will be affected. And of that 20%, let's just say 1%, 2% will only will be the people who die from it. So this goes back to 1%. I actually found the figures. I don't know where they were for the UK. And I saw the different age groups, how they're affected. And when I looked at it and broke it all down, it was like 1% or even 0.5%. It was something even less. I was just like, whoa, that's interesting in my investigation. But this is what I was saying about anti-vax. If you've got a drug that literally, or a medicine, that you can take if you become that ill. And for instance, where I went through earlier about if you are laying on that bed in that hospital and they said, you've got this choice, you can take this drug or you can risk. You are deteriorating. You can feel it. You are in and out of consciousness. We're telling you, well, you have the choice. We're not going to ask your wife. We're asking you, will you take this drug? There is a lot of people. For instance, me, I'll be like, shoot me up.
Yeah, you would, because the way you're selling it, I would be scared as well. If someone's telling me, you're going to die, you're going to do this, you're going to do that.
I do not get commissions. There is not a link, down there for an affiliate either.
No, but fear works in every level. It works in the same thing. Like, I can project fear onto children, and I've been a coach before. You either use people, you either get what you want from fear or respect. And unfortunately, the world we live in, it works on the basis of fear. It doesn't work on respect, because we don't respect the people in power, but we fear them. We don't respect anyone in power. We fear everything, because again, they control. Like I said to my brother earlier on, there's not many things in this world I can control. I can't control the economy. I can't control what these institutions get up to every single day. I can't control the corruption. I can't control minimum wage. I can't
corruption in the United Kingdom, sir. Are you sure?
Oh yeah, well they are the architects of corruption.
We're making sure somebody's financially rewarded
for
helping them on their way.
It's policy. It's policy. But one thing I can control, Martin, and I would say to the people who are listening, or people who listen in the future, is that if you're going to control and if you're going to take responsibility for anything, take control of your health, take responsibility for your health. And when you get sick, take responsibility that you got sick, not no one else. Don't blame it on a virus. Don't blame it on a microbe that you can't see. Blame it on your own indiscretions, because when we start taking responsibility as human beings, that's when we start taking control back of our lives, because we can't keep walking in the dark blindfolded and expecting things to just miraculously change for the better due to some wonder drug, because the wonder drug's always been around the corner. Right?
Let me just jump in there for one quick second. Going back to the fasting of the 10 days, again, be responsible, but also be responsible and understand something very special.
Yeah.
Is that if you have that burger, have that sausage, have, and I'm only going to say even plant food, there is chemicals used on them to produce, especially with genetically modified produce or anything really. You don't know, exactly how these things may affect you. But this is why, for instance, not eating meat, a lot of steroids. I mean, you said about this earlier about obviously being given steroids to make you feel better as a kid or a young lad. It's very bad. You shouldn't be having steroids, only if you really, really, really need to. One of those things. But a lot of these things that you eat and drink, fizzy drinks, wine, and all the other alcohols.
All have an effect.
Yeah, they do all have an effect, and they all have chemicals in them, or the product that you're eating has had something given to them, like a drug, which then passes through you. Take, for instance, if you're pregnant, that's why they tell you not to have certain products or certain things, because you will pass it on to your child.
100%, and that's why people who are drug addicts, the kids are born drug addicts. Like, this is, whatever you are, what you, and that's what you and that's what the Hippocratic Code is. Hippocrates, whatever his name is, the philosopher. He said, let medicine be your food and let food be your medicine.
Yeah.
Now, we all know that the food that we eat to this day is corrupted and it's full of pesticides and stuff. But let me tell you something now. Food in its raw form, food in its natural form, organic or pesticides or whatever. Your body.
You agree to pesticides.
No, I don't agree with them. But what I'm trying to say to people is that it's unavoidable. But what I can say to people is,
pesticides, or just
if you go to supermarket and you buy your fruit and veg, it's going to have a certain amount. Even organic food is going to have a certain amount of pesticides on it and stuff.
Not if you grow it yourself, though.
Not if you grow it yourself, but we don't. Some people don't have that luxury. Again, that's people's choices. But all I have to say is, the body can deal with these things in its raw form, and that we are not. There's no underlying right answer for all of this in terms of the perfect lifestyle, because we live in the Western world. We are surrounded by the gifts that the Western world give us. Everything is easy. Everything is, get it now syndrome. And we've got to live in this world. But in order for us to actually take responsibility, is actually to reduce the amount of toxins we put into our body. And once we do that, and once we get more exercise, once we get more sunlight, once we get more fresh air, once we start actually doing the right things based on what nature wants us to do, then we'll live a far better and we'll thrive more, But that's people's personal choice. Yeah,
without a doubt. I mean, you got to think about all the livestock that's all over the world, as in for the production of hamburgers and God knows what else, and the amount of pollution that it actually produces.
Yeah.
But obviously, to have all those animals, they need to be obviously pumped full of drugs so that they don't obviously catch something or create a virus that we then eat. I mean, mad cow's disease, obviously, if we get a cow and it had mad cow's disease, then obviously it'll be passed on to us. All these things, are there to, we're ingesting them without even knowing. So, well, we do know, but we ignore. I think that's the biggest thing. And like you're saying, the laziness of society. And I'm guilty, don't get me wrong, I don't have these cheeks because I'm,
the government and the government and the pharmaceutical industries and the doctors and the surgeons and stuff, they prey on our ignorance. They prey on our stupidity. And like I said, with this COVID-19 hoax, I'm going to call it the scamdemic. All I have to say to this is that based on their own statistics, based on their own findings, it's not enough to put the world on lockdown. And the hypocrisy of modern medicine and the government to lock us in our houses and tell us to go and drink alcohol and eat at McDonald's or eat fast food is absolute ludicrous. To actually suggest that a government is there to actually help you and who actually cares about your well-being. Because let me tell you something now, a government who sends the working class to war to go and blow up poor people in other countries is not a government that cares for people. And that is it. You cannot, there's no legitimate sort of argument you can have for a government which wants to do right by people, but then on the other side wants to do wrong by people at the same time. It don't make sense.
In what respect? Give me an example. What do you mean? What's England done, or the United Kingdom, or Great Britain?
Well, I can safely say that this country, or the people in charge, or the institutions, or whoever's behind it, the biggest form of slavery that exists is taxation. Now, if you eradicate taxation, you eradicate poverty. No, overnight. If you eradicate poverty, you eradicate crime. If you eradicate poverty, you eradicate ill health. Because majority of people that do get sick are people that are basically come from poor backgrounds.
Yeah, they have a majority of illnesses. Oh, Alexa, stop. Oh, we better start closing off due to my next appointment. But
yeah, no worries.
But yeah, I do think one of the biggest things here is I don't think it'll eradicate ill health. It will definitely contribute to reducing the amount of ill health in people. But then again, we need to get rid of money if you're going to go down that line. Money is...
It's like anything though, Martin, is that all these things are good in a sense, but it's the people that are controlling it. Like the fact that
we're the 1% of the world then. I mean, what you're talking about the 1% of the world, the people who control the world.
Yeah, and again, I've got no if these people, if their intent is to do right by us, I've got no problems with them doing what they're doing, but they don't have our best interests at heart. We are basically slaves for a group of sort of psychopathic lunatics who want to go around and do what they want to do and get away with it constantly. And we're the ones that pick up the pieces. We're the ones that see our family sick. We're the ones that see our families be destroyed. We're the ones that send our kids off to wars to fight for them. We're the ones that work 65 years of our life to pay our taxation towards aristocracy who never work a day in their life. And like I said,
they go in those big rooms and all chat to each other, going, yeah.
Shake hands and stuff. But like one thing I like to say before we go is if anyone takes anything from this conversation, is take responsibility for your actions. And one thing I have learned in my life is taking responsibility is the ultimate sort of way to freedom. It's a hard choice to make. But when you start taking responsibility and actually taking ownership of your life, it becomes a hard road of getting to know yourself and getting to know your flaws. But when you actually see through the mirror and see through yourself, it's the only way to actually free yourself from this sort of tyranny that we live in today. Because
I can't see yet. I mean, having food in the way that you're saying, I can see its benefits without a doubt. You know, all the chemicals that we do have in our current products that sit upon our shelves due to our ability to have all this luxury food is an interesting one. But exercise. So what are the 5 steps before we go? We've got exercise, fruit,
we've got the
water. There's no such thing as fresh air, is there? Anyway, water, sleep, and raw food. Is that correct?
And that's it. And sunlight, and get out in the sun, get outdoors as much as you possibly can. Stay away from staying indoors or watching TVs or sitting on social media. Get out.
People have a debate.
Go out. Do rather than watch this debate, go out for a walk. That'll do you 10 times.
No. Take it with you. Walk with it. Yeah. Comment. Don't forget. Put in the comments. I want to hear what some other questions or what some other people think just before we go. Maybe you can send me some links, James, and we can put them in. I can put them in the description for people later. They're watching it on the replay. Call it. I do think we've got to continue this on. So we will arrange another bout of this, I think. What do you reckon, James?
Yeah, I don't mind. It's good. And like I said, if it sets off a seed in one person, and it sets off and it gets them thinking, then that's all really that matters to me. And again, I don't benefit from this. I don't make no money from this. I'm not a scientist. I don't have this amazing vaccine around the corner. It's an amazing wonder drug. I'm just a man that cares. And all that matters to me is that people don't throw themselves under a bus when it comes to ill health. Don't run to the doctor. Don't run to the hospital. Don't get chopped up or drugged up just because they tell you this is the right way to do, the right way to go about things. Take ownership of yourself and try and educate yourself, because it's very, very, especially in the world we're living in now, educate yourself, free your mind from this medical tyranny, and fingers crossed that people actually take some of this on board, because the only right path is through nature, and that's how I see it. And if anyone wants to look up natural hygiene, just research it. There's good authors in Herbert Shelton, Dr. John Fielder, Lauren Lockman. He's got a lot of YouTube videos. He's fantastic, Lauren Lockman. TC Fry, Albert Emmerich. There's so many people that you can look at and focus your mind on, and actually look at, freeing yourself and actually not having and alleviating the fear from your life, which is what I've done, which is the most profound thing what I've done, and what my brother's done, and what all my friends have done. So, it's a step in the right direction. And don't get me wrong, Marion, I get things wrong and I'm learning as I go along, and I do make mistakes, but the mistakes are getting fewer and fewer. So again, I do have good days and bad days, but a lot of my days are good days now. So
I'm glad to hear it.
There you go.
Could you do me a favor? Send me some of the links to some of those books.
Yeah.
I'll put them in the description, and I'm sure people will want some or whatever, or order it. And I'm sure it will open the eyes of quite a few people out there.
All right, cheers. That's brilliant.
From FBL, myself, Mike Kelly's called Smile is my nickname. I'm trying to get out there now again. The Bucks debate. Until next time, I'll see you.
See you later, mate. Take care.
I've got to push the right button now. I'm going to push it wrong.